Loose Women Studio, Day. The set shimmered beneath soft ITV studio lighting. Pastel panels, cushioned chairs, and coffee mugs painted the illusion of comfort. But tension crackled beneath the surface like static before a storm. Camera 3 pans left, capturing Meghan's face as she repositions in her chair, crossing one leg over the other with deliberate calm. Her blazer still crisp, but her smile now firmly gone. A flicker in her eyes suggested she wasn't just defending her image, she was defending her right to exist on her own terms. "Let's just see how far we get before the next interrogation," she said, voice dipped in iron. The audience gave a quiet gasp, not loud, but collective. On Kay, nervously clutching her cue cards. "Of course, we appreciate your honesty," Kay offered quickly, her voice light as air, almost brittle. "Let's circle back to your recent speech at the Women's Leadership Summit in Chicago. You spoke about dignity, about reclaiming voice after silence. Could you elaborate?" Meghan tilted her head. For a moment, it seemed she might ease, soften back into the PR-trained version of herself. But something in her had already shifted. "What I said in Chicago," Meghan began slowly, "was about how often women are applauded for surviving things they should never have been subjected to in the first place. And yet, they're punished for speaking about it." Denise folded her hands in her lap. "Are you saying you've been punished for speaking?" "I'm saying," Meghan said, her voice low but steady, "that this country has always had a complicated relationship with truth, especially when it comes from the mouths of women it can't control." A low murmur rippled through the audience. Camera 2 close-up. Janet Street Porter, eyes narrowing. "Well, I think people would agree that freedom of speech is alive and well." "You're here, aren't you?" Janet remarked with a pointed grin. "Doesn't sound like anyone silenced you." Meghan turned, her expression glacial. "Being allowed to speak and being heard without being vilified are two very different things, Janet." Janet raised an eyebrow. "You do realize this is Loose Women, not The Hague?" A few chuckles from the crowd. Ruth's smile froze like porcelain. Meghan leaned in. "And yet, the stakes feel just as high, don't they?" Silence. Even the cameramen held their breath. Backstage, producers exchanged frantic glances. The control room lit up with whispers. "Do we go to break?" "Not yet. Ratings are through the roof." Meanwhile, Denise Welch calmly cleared her throat. "Meghan," she said gently, "I do hear you, and I think many people relate to feeling misunderstood. But sometimes, when someone's constantly at the center of controversy, is it not worth asking what they might be bringing into the room themselves?" The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Meghan's lip twitched. "You know what's funny, Denise? The minute a woman refuses to smile through discomfort, suddenly she's the storm. Not the one who created the weather." Janet muttered something under her breath. Meghan heard it. "Excuse me," she said sharply, her tone like broken glass. "Do you have something to say?" Ruth interjected quickly. "Let's keep this civil, please. Meghan, I know tensions can run high, but we are committed to having this platform be respectful for everyone." "Oh, is that what this is?" Meghan replied with a bitter laugh. "Respect." She uncrossed her legs and sat forward. "Respect would have been not packaging this appearance as a warm welcome and then peppering me with baited questions designed to get a reaction." Denise shook her head softly. "That wasn't the intention." "But it was the result," Meghan snapped. "And I've had enough of playing gracious guest on sets that already have my trial scripted out." Audience reaction shot. Stunned faces. Whispers. Kay tried again. "Perhaps we could." "No," Meghan cut in. "I'm not here to perform niceness for your comfort." Suddenly, her voice dropped an octave. "You invited me for truth. I brought it." She stood. Slowly, deliberately. The scrape of the studio chair echoed across the silent set. "I'm done." Producers' voices crackled through the earpieces. "Delay ad break. Hold camera 3. Zoom in now." But Meghan didn't wait. She smoothed her blazer, gave a final glance toward the stunned panel, then turned and began walking off set. Someone backstage called her name. She didn't look back. Camera fades to black, but not before catching Denise's final words. Maybe it wasn't a performance. Maybe that was the real Meghan. And somewhere, in that cavernous silence left behind, even the most skeptical viewers found themselves questioning what they just witnessed. This wasn't television. This was combustion. And no one was walking away untouched. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the theme music faded, replaced by an unnatural hush. The women on the panel were back in their seats, but the atmosphere had shifted completely. There was no trace of the bubbly banter or polished smiles that usually colored daytime television. Only the hum of tension, thick and unrelenting. Meghan Markle sat poised at the center of it all, eyes trained on Denise Welch like a hawk circling prey. She tapped her fingers softly against her mug, each motion deliberate, controlled. Across from her, Denise adjusted her mic and calmly folded her hands. She was composed, but the flicker in her eye said one thing clearly: "We're not done." "Before we went to break," Denise began softly, "we were talking about contradictions. Not as a personal attack, but as a question a lot of people have." Meghan's smile returned, brittle and blade-thin. "No, Denise, you were talking about contradictions. I was defending my right to not be dissected like I'm your morning crossword." The audience sat stone still. Even the production assistants behind the cameras looked glued to the exchange, eyes darting between the two women like they were courtside at a final match. Kay Adams opened her mouth to interject, but Ruth lightly tapped her arm. "Not yet." Denise continued, voice steady. "You've spoken about being silenced, Meghan. But I wonder sometimes if what you really wanted was to control the conversation entirely." Meghan blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. "You frame every question you don't like as invasive," Denise added gently, "every challenge as cruelty. But public life involves tension. It's not always applause and soft questions." Meghan leaned forward, narrowing her gaze. "And who decides which questions are fair? You? The tabloids? The people who've never lived a day in my skin?" "No," Denise said without flinching. "But it also isn't just you. You chose to step into the spotlight. You made Netflix deals. You released a memoir. People listened. But they also responded. That's the exchange, isn't it?" Meghan laughed, not with amusement, but something sharper. "You act like I owe you something just because I shared part of my story. That's the problem with this culture. You think access means ownership." "I think transparency means consistency," Denise replied calmly. Silence again. Then Janet finally spoke up, voice clipped but direct. "You say people misunderstand you, Meghan. But sometimes you speak in riddles and swipes, then get offended when others don't decode it properly. That's not misunderstanding. That's misdirection." Meghan slowly turned to face her. "And what would you know about misdirection, Janet? Weren't you the one who wrote a whole column on my weaponized victimhood before I'd even spoken?" Janet didn't deny it. "Yes, I did. Because when people use pain as a shield from all criticism, it becomes manipulative." Ruth raised her hand slightly. "Let's keep this respectful." But Meghan wasn't done. "I came here thinking this would be a conversation. What I got was a tribunal in lipstick and pearls." "You were invited," Denise said softly, "not interrogated. Then maybe next time, ask questions instead of laying traps." Denise's face didn't flinch, but her fingers curled slightly in her lap. "Do you see every tough question as a trap, Meghan? Or just the ones you don't want to answer?" Meghan stood now, slowly. She wasn't storming off, not yet, but she was looming, commanding the room like it was a throne room instead of a talk show set. "You know what I see," she said, looking out into the studio lights. "I see a panel of women pretending to support other women, while picking them apart like gossip columnists in designer heels." A few members of the audience clapped lightly, unsure whether to cheer or freeze. "You preach feminism," Meghan continued, her voice rising slightly, "but when a woman actually speaks, raw, angry, unscripted, suddenly she's hysterical, dramatic, ungrateful." Kay finally spoke up, softly. "I don't think anyone said that." Meghan snapped back, "They don't have to say it. It's written on every headline the next day. Duchess loses it." Meghan snaps again. "It's always again, isn't it? Always a pattern you've decided I'll never escape." "Meghan," Ruth said cautiously. "I don't think anyone here sees you as a villain." "But you sell me as one," Meghan shot back. "And you know what's worse? You smile while doing it." Suddenly, she turned toward the live audience. "I wonder how many of you came today hoping for a train wreck," she said, eyes scanning the rows. "You didn't want kindness or insight. You wanted chaos. You wanted me to crack. Congratulations." The studio remained frozen. No clapping now. Just that uncomfortable stillness where even a cough might feel explosive. "I am not your content," Meghan said slowly. "I am not your comeback queen. I am not your punching bag." "Then maybe don't keep stepping into the ring," Janet murmured, barely audible, but Meghan heard. She spun toward her, fire dancing in her expression. "Oh, please. You've made a career saying the unsayable, then hiding behind the excuse of provocative commentary. I speak once and I'm called unstable." Denise leaned forward. "It's not what you say, Meghan. It's how you treat the people who ask." Meghan didn't blink. "And how do they treat me, Denise? Or do you only see one side of the microscope?" The show's producer appeared just off stage, whispering something to Ruth. She nodded tightly. "We're out of time," Ruth announced, her voice sounding like it was trying to wrap a bomb in silk. Meghan exhaled, like she'd just stepped out of a battlefield. Denise finally broke the quiet. "You're not a villain, Meghan," she said quietly. "But you're not the only one who's been bruised. Don't act like pain gives you the monopoly on truth." Meghan didn't reply. She simply looked at each panelist one last time, eyes cold, unyielding. Then, without another word, she stepped down from the platform, heels clicking across the floor, blazer swaying behind her like a cape. Camera stays on Denise, who sits still, watching her go. Not smug. Not angry. Just quiet. Processing. A long, uncomfortable beat. Then Ruth, in her practiced voice, tried to salvage the close. "Well, that was an important conversation. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back after this." Meghan Markle hadn't moved in nearly 30 seconds, but the energy around her had. Her arms remained folded, jaw locked, breathing shallow. She stood beside the chair that once offered the illusion of civility, her posture saying more than words ever could. "This is what happens when you speak your truth in Britain," she said slowly, voice low but razor-sharp. "You get mocked, minimized, and turned into the punchline of your own trauma." Then she looked directly at Denise Welch and said, almost in a whisper but aimed like a dagger, "And they wonder why I left." The room went still. Even the hum of the studio lights felt louder. Everyone, audience, hosts, crew, watched as the tension reached its peak. Meghan didn't flinch. She stood frozen, radiating both anger and exhaustion. Denise sat still, her posture composed but her knuckles slightly white from how tightly her hands were clasped. She had taken verbal hits before, but this wasn't sparring. This was war disguised as daytime television. Ruth tried again, reaching for a thread of normalcy. "Perhaps we can shift the conversation. The Archwell Foundation. Your work with girls' education." Meghan didn't even glance at her. "Funny," she muttered. "You weren't interested in that before. You were all too busy tearing into my marriage, my mental health, my choices." Denise finally spoke, calm and measured. "You've had every opportunity to bring up your work. But instead of using your voice to elevate your causes, you've used it to belittle everyone around you." Meghan took a step forward, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. "You think I wanted this?" she snapped. "You think I enjoy being analyzed like some case study in royal disobedience? No matter what I say, it's twisted. If I'm quiet, I'm hiding something. If I speak, I'm performing." Janet Street Porter chimed in with a dry tone. "Well, you do have a knack for making headlines." Meghan turned slowly toward her. "And you have a knack for turning women's pain into punchlines." The audience gasped, some in disbelief, some in quiet agreement. Denise spoke again. "Meghan, you're not the only woman who's suffered in the spotlight. I've dealt with addiction, grief, and being publicly torn apart. I just never built a brand around it." Meghan's eyes widened, mouth parting in disbelief. "You're accusing me of profiting off my trauma?" I'm saying if you want to be seen as real, Denise replied evenly, then stop pretending you're the only one who's been hurt. Meghan stepped back slightly, stunned into silence for the first time. Her expression shifted, less rage, more disbelief. She turned to Ruth, still standing, her voice quieter now but laced with wounded pride. Are you seriously going to let this woman shame me on national television? Ruth was visibly unsettled. No one is shaming you, Meghan. We're just trying to have a real conversation. Meghan gave a sharp, bitter laugh. A real conversation? This wasn't a conversation. This was a trap with coffee mugs. Kay Adams tried to gently cut in. I don't think anyone wanted it to go this way. But Meghan was unraveling. I should have known better, she muttered. I came here thinking maybe it would be different. Maybe I'd be treated like a human being instead of a headline. She stepped toward the table and placed her hands on the back of the chair, gripping it tightly. You know what's exhausting? Spending your whole life fighting to be heard, only to be told by people like Denise that you're being too loud. Denise leaned in, soft but unrelenting. And you know what's exhausting? Watching someone twist every question into a personal attack because they can't face an honest answer. The tension in the room snapped like a cord under pressure. Meghan looked around the set, then back at the audience. I hope this was worth the ratings, she said, her voice flat. Because I'm done. Not just with this interview, this whole charade you call journalism. She turned to the audience, making sure her words landed. Think twice about the people you let define your truth. And with that, she pulled off her mic, placed it on the table, and walked off without another word. The studio door shut behind her with a soft, devastating finality. Silence. No one moved for several seconds. Then, Denise finally exhaled and looked at Ruth. I didn't want it to end like that. Ruth nodded slowly, her voice almost a whisper. None of us did. The air in the studio was thick. You could feel the shift, the crack in the surface of what daytime TV was supposed to be. Meghan's absence filled the room louder than her presence ever had. The fallout started before the credits even rolled. Clips of the clash flooded the internet. Hashtags trended globally within the hour. Audiences divided. Some called it bravery. Others called it a meltdown. But everyone had something to say. And maybe that was the real story. What's your take on the confrontation? Did Meghan speak truth to power, or was it a missed opportunity for dialogue? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe if you want more unfiltered stories that challenge what we think we know. Because sometimes, the most powerful moments aren't rehearsed, they're real.